George? George? We're ready.
Rock and roll?
Rock and roll.
Very, very good. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'd like to call this meeting to order. If we could have Carino de la Cuesta lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Carino.
Okay. Everybody have their right hand over their heart and repeat the
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Mr. Secretary, can we have roll call, please?
Sorry. I'll move.
A roll call. President Thomas.
Here.
Vice President Benjamin.
Here.
Secretary Hendry. Here. Treasurer Hopp. I saw her somewhere. Okay, she's here, but give her credit. Okay. Ms. Savard. Ms. Meyer. Mr. Lazarovitz. Mr. Martin.
He's here.
Here, I saw Mr. Martin somewhere.
Yep.
Okay. Ms. Skelton. Mr. Kamara. Here. Mr. Maleko. Mr. Anand. Mr. De La Cuesta.
here.
Ms. Padden. Mr. Lynn. Mr. Luna. Mr. Marabi. Ms. Raines.
Here.
Mr. Robbins. Here. Mr. Knoll. Be sure about Mr. Knoll. I'm not that familiar with him. He's not here. Okay.
Oh.
Going once, going twice. Ms. Asghari.
Here.
Okay. I count 11.
Very good. We have a quorum and we can conduct business.
We need to use the microphone.
Comments from the chair, I have none at this time. We're going to skip secretary's report and the treasurer's report as it's a special meeting. And we're going to skip the committee chairperson's reports as well. As far as public comment, Carino has set up the 15-minute Q&A after each section of presenters. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Carino for the introduction of the first inaugural Van Nuys Planning Summit. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, George. Thanks for everybody showing up for this event. It took a long while and a lot of work as far as getting the people to speak about Van Nuys in general, as far as the future of Van Nuys. And one of the things that I'm seeing is that if we're looking at Van Nuys, the possibility of having light rail could change the dynamic of Van Nuys as we know it. And that's the reason why we're doing this planning summit, to get the people prepared, sort of the things that are occurring, especially with Recode LA, Great Streets, Plan for a Healthy LA, My LA. A lot of initiatives and a lot of organizations are pushing to be more sustainable. But thanks for everybody showing up. First, I'd like to introduce Andy Hurwitz. He's a blogger in Van Nuys, and he necessarily speaks to Van Nuys, but not necessarily Van Nuys. But he's an actor, screenwriter, good around guy who cares about Van Nuys. So I'd like to introduce Andy Hurwitz as an introduction.
Okay, how's that? Oh, all right, good. I can do President Obama kind of speech here. Some of you know me. I'm a blogger who writes something called Here in Van Nuys, about but not limited to Van Nuys. I've been doing it for the last 10 years. Basically, I take pictures and write about the community, and I put my forceful and opinionated essays online, sometimes offending or pointing out different foibles or characteristics of our community. So I thought I would just give you a little bit of my background. Thank you, Quirino, and the Van Nuys Community Council for creating this summit to present ideas for improving the community. I'm honored to speak here. When people, outsiders, talk about Van Nuys, there are sometimes snickers. This is supposed to be the home of everything rotten in the San Fernando Valley. Yet, I see a different Van Nuys. I see it as a resident, a writer, and a photographer. But I'm not an expert, a crime reporter, or a politician. I see human life going on in dignified and honorable ways, oftentimes on the side streets, where I walk and photograph old houses, old buildings, old gardens, and old churches, places others drive by fast. If you merely speed through Van Nuys, across Victory or Van Owen, you would see a lot of blight and a lot of ugliness. But if you could park your car, get out and walk down a side street, a small street, a narrow street, you might find that life is not so awful there. There are plenty of tree-lined streets, lots of pride in home ownership, and a variety of people who are striving to work, to go to school, and raise children here. That is why I think the hope for Van Nuys is not in the massive and enormous projects we imagine might transform it. Instead, it's going to start in the small businesses such as McLeod Ale, a craft brewery in the heart of industrial Calvert Street. Come see it any night and witness a community gathering and socializing and drinking peacefully. Near downtown Van Nuys, there are underutilized and empty warehouses, old factories, and parking lots. All of these are waiting for imaginative and industrious entrepreneurs to make new life out of dead places. We need to take our enormous parking lots and carve them up into organic gardens. We need to put trees down the center of Van Nuys Boulevard and slow down cars. We need to build multifamily apartments and stores so people can shop and live by walking, not driving. We need to make oversized streets and oversized parking lots into small, intimate, delightful places. We are a majority Latino city. Why not look to Spain and Mexico for examples of how to make vibrant places, marketplaces set around fountains and walkways built under arches? We can innovate by reviving and remaking old classical ideas of space and architectural design familiar to anyone who knows life in Central and South America and Europe. Van Nuys got too big too fast. It paved over the orange groves. It widened the streets to make our main boulevards the size of freeways. It bulldozed and destroyed old homes. It wiped out the streetcar and the movie theater, the corner drugstore and the corner dentist. It hid its police station from public view and shoved it in the back of a long plaza. How can the police and public get to know each other when the very headquarters of the Van Nuys LAPD precinct is hidden off-street? Public safety is enhanced when cops are on the beat. But that's what the experts thought best. A long time ago, the so-called experts decided that the best way to modernize Van Nuys was to destroy it. They put up high-intensity Cobra lamps and dropped mini-malls and eye-busting billboards on every corner. We have, from Oxnard to Roscoe along Van Nuys Boulevard, a display of a half-century of mischief under the banner of free enterprise. It is not free. It is enslaving. When we live in a garbage dump of junk food, massage parlors, bail bonds, and marijuana outlets, we are transformed from civilized life into a freak show. We must make architectural choices as well as economic ones. We must devise a plan made up of small, human, organic, green, sustainable, and progressive apartments, homes, businesses, and institutions in a walkable, safe, and appealing environment. Let's look to innovative cities around the world whose architectural inventiveness, imaginative designs, and thoughtful structures are placed near mass transit and bike lanes. Van Nuys does not have to build mediocrity. We can be experimental, eccentric, and fantastic. We are better than we think we are. We are allowed to be discouraged, but we are not allowed to give up. We have to build a better Van Nuys by guiding it into the future while learning from the mistakes of the past. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Andy. Next, we have our new VNNC board member, Maddie Asgharian. She would like to talk about the climate laws that are enacted and how we need to follow it.
Hi, everyone. My name's Maddie Asgharian, and I don't care if you use plastic bags. I see a lot of suits and not a lot of tats, so it tells me that there's a lot of suits and not a lot of community here. So before I talk about things that the room is already familiar with, raise your hand if you're aware that California has climate change laws. Okay, that'll shorten how long I speak. Raise your hand if you went to Venice Beach in the 90s. Raise your hand if you've been to Venice Beach in 2014, 2015. In 1990, if someone told you the rent in Venice would be greater than the rent in Beverly Hills, what would you have said? Welcome to Van Nuys. I'm going to just make this very quick. To the planners in the room, when you go on community meetings and as your various projects take place, we passed climate laws in 2006 and 2008 that no one is aware of. Please don't give the community hope that they have so many choices. There's one barometer with regard to our land use in California. We are mandated to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We're mandated by AB 32, we're mandated by SB 375, and a whole bunch of other, laws that have come on board in support of that with how we put organics in the landfill and things like that. So for instance, we're going to have an ordinance that requires composting. Let's not pretend that that's because we're a green city that we want to do that. We're mandated in California to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In our I guess this 2014-2015 California budget, the inaugural Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities program was launched by the state. They allocated $120 million for affordable housing for the entire state of California. That's one house in LA. When they were talking about updating, for instance, the Coastal Commission wanted to update their zoning and whatnot around the coast. They allocated $100,000 for that project. That's the cost of a purse in Venice. So we're having all these laws, but we're not funding them, and we're not educating the community about them. I guess I'm here to stand before you to tell you the world is changing. And with regard to experts, how many of you were around during the 2007-2008 housing crash? And how many of you know that there's financial advisors and experts out there? And how many of you still trust them? My view of planning has been summed up in a great book that's been put out, Never Built LA. It doesn't mean that planners are the experts. We live here. This is our space. We're the experts. And across LA, in Echo Park, at Atwater, in Venice, too many people thought experts were going to do it for them. And now we can't afford to live there. So do we want that for Van Nuys? At this inaugural meeting, when you're framing what you want, ask yourself if that's what you want. And if not, then you have to participate. You have to become involved. You have to educate yourself. Parking is no longer a CEQA priority. A CEQA priority is now the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Affordable housing. The program that they created in 2014-2015 is a weighted system. 55% of what goes into weighing whether your project for affordable housing will be accepted for that measly little chunk of $120 million is, does your project reduce greenhouse gas emissions? So I'm Maddie. I hope you'll consider reusing a renewable plastic, other than plastic, but that's not really my main concern. I hope that as we take initiative of our land use and planning in Van Nuys, that you'll bring your friends, you'll bring your family, you'll bring your experiences, and that we create a place together. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. we'll get down to the history portion. The first person that we're bringing to the history portion is Rudy Ortega Jr. He's from the Fernandino Tatavan Band of Mission Indians. Before there were missions, before there were Van Nuys, they were here before. So I'm glad that Rudy agreed to speak, and here's Rudy Ortega.
Yeah, I'm in it. Hello, everyone. As said, my name is Rudy Ortega. I wanted to just talk about the history and the culture, a bit about the tribe and what my tribe is. Actually, I won't be able to use this mic by my hand, but yeah, because we won't pick you up. No? All right. So I just want to briefly talk about my tribe, what my tribe is. And there's a lot of history behind it. My tribe and ancestors that I come from is multiple villages throughout San Fernando, Santa Cruz, and Antelope Valley. In the San Fernando area, the people were called or referred to as Pavisikuttam, which means the people of the shaded area or people. And the people in San Gabriel, my tribe called them Gomivitam. I know there's a term that uses Tongva. Tongva is a later term and is usually just meant for one village. And then up north in Santa Cruz, or the mountain people that were called Tatavitam or Tavitam. And then those were folks from Santa Cruz and on further up. So what I've got here, and I put up on the table over there, is it's a map of LA County, and it has all the villages throughout the valley, throughout San Fernando Valley, Santa Cruz, San Gabriel. And there's only a few there, so if those who are interested, you can take a copy, take one copy or so. But the villages that my ancestors that I come from is Situnanga, which is in Balboa and Ventura Boulevard. In '84, when they were building the tall building right in the corner, they discovered the village. My ancestors actually had a land patent in 1845 for that village. And coming up further, you had San Fernando, one of our tribal captains, Rodrigo Rocha. He had the land patent to San Fernando. Then you go up into Santa Cruz, San Francisco Canyon, Tochunanga. My ancestors come from that village area as well, which was another land patent, but that patent was a patent up to the Spanish that were occupying the area. So there's quite a few areas of the maps here, villages, or that were referred to as rancherias as well. So I was invited just to explain a little bit of the tribe's history and the culture and my heritage and lineage of villages that I come from. But also, too, in our tradition, our customs, we also sing a song. So what I want to do is just sing a song for y'all today, for inviting me out to explain a little bit of the history. And what I also like to do is, if there's time, just a little Q&A, because I can run it off a couple hours, and I don't want to. But I prefer if there's a special interest or concern or topic you'd like to know about the tribe, you can just simply ask me, and I think that narrows it down more quickly.
We'll have a group discussion after the historical part. So once the historical part category, everyone will sit on that table and we'll ask questions.
Good. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to do a song for you. This is one of our traditional songs. Dame hunu, dame hata. We ya we hunu dame hunu oh dame ata we ya we hunu dame hunu oh dame ata we ya we hunu we ata we So thank you. Again, there's maps there and pretty much the history. And once we have Q&A, I think it's best that way. I don't want to take up much of your time.
Thank you, Rudy.
Sure. Like I said, there's quite a bit. On this map, we have a center here. It's called Haramukta American Indian Center. It's in the Angeles Forest. We have a permit with the forestry. It's a cultural center, and it gives cultural history of the four tribes. As I mentioned, Serrano, Garbelino, Fernandino, and traditional names Gomivitam, Shimivitam, and Tatavitam, and Katanamuk as well. And then also my tribe's office in the city of San Fernando, right across the street, or kitty corner from the city of San Fernando, from their city hall. Our office is right there. We've always been in San Fernando for a very long time, or in Santa Cruz, but our office's headquarters always been in the city of San Fernando. So we have some information there. The tribe worked with a couple areas like the county for Vasquez Rock, so there's history of the tribe's information there as well. Pyramid Lake, Piru Lake. We're working with a couple areas for a cultural center in Santa Cruz, over in by Magic Mountain area as an interpretive center as well, another one. Plaza Rita Canyon with Mike Kontatovich, we have some more information there as well about the tribe. So quite a few different areas. If you go to the tribe's website, it's tatavium.us or .org, and there's more information there as well.
Thank you very much, Rudy. Next person we have is John Henry. He's a Van Nuys Neighborhood Council board member, and he's going to give a brief history of Van Nuys. And with the assistant of Ronnie Schiff.
Sure. Okay, and okay, thank you. And how am I going to do this? Is this going to work? Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay. Okay. And I especially want to thank Ms. Schiff. This is, in a sense, kind of what you might call a cross between a Chamber of Commerce type video, but my own very serious view of Van Nuys, and it wouldn't have worked without Ms. Schiff's photos. I may actually even cut some of the text because I think her photos, the photos she found, stand so well, even better than the story. But let us start then. First to say, I was born and lived in Van Nuys all my life, and a lot of the past of Van Nuys is rather lost. I only really discovered it, let's say, when I was 60 and I started to look at things. Okay, we get a little more sound or? Yeah, go ahead. Not the best of sound, okay. Okay. Well, first of all, it's rather hard to believe, but this town actually was let me start again. After the Indians had gone to the mission, and had disappeared or had gone to their crossed over into the rest of American life, there was nothing in the valley. And essentially, this is what Van Nuys looked like in 1911. This is essentially looking down this street, right toward the orange line. And here you see the people who are coming to the Great Van Nuys auction of 1911. This was even before the days of, just on the edge of the days of cars. They actually took the train and were walking here up to the sale, which was right about at this corner here. Here you can see one set of pictures. You can see what it looked like the first day. A little slower, but I know we're trying to move. Let's go back just a little for just a second. John. Just a little slower. Can you go back one? John, in the way of the street. Go ahead. Okay. Well, okay. Here you can see the town in 1911 when the streetcar came. This is some vague idea of what light rail may look like, and as you see, it could be rather. You're standing in front of the street. Well, where do you want to stand? Just sit in the chair. Here? Yeah, just sit in the chair. Okay. Okay. Just a little slower. I will try to move through this, Carino, but still. Here's the picture of the great landowner who Van Nuys, the city was named after, who didn't really live in Van Nuys, who didn't really own, didn't really contribute anything to the community. It's just when they sold his ranch, they gave credit to him and he had the name. If you think about the valley, almost every community in the valley has changed its name. Maybe Van Nuys should. Here's a sign of some of the great ranch that was here. The Van Nuys Ranch covered essentially the whole west end of the valley, from Valley College out to Chatsworth, from the Southern Pacific Railroad south. Okay? Okay. The house that Van Nuys built, the first frame house in the valley. But as I said, this really wasn't Van Nuys' ranch. But it was a very unusual situation here. If you remember the movie Chinatown, people have always made comments about secret land deals. Many people thought when the aqueduct was coming to Los Angeles that the rich people who bought the valley were in a secret land deal. Okay, here's a good picture of the life on the Van Nuys Ranch. Okay, I'll go through this one. I'll even go this way. Here you get one interesting view. People don't realize how unusual the construction was. Van Nuys Boulevard, they built a road all the way from Los Angeles and put the streetcar line in it. Chandler Boulevard, Van Nuys Boulevard, Sherman Way, all the way to the West Valley. A paved road when there was no paved roads anywhere. A road so good you took it instead of Ventura Boulevard. Here you can see some pictures of Van Nuys. Okay, I can move on. Here's Victory Boulevard, the famous pepper trees that everyone seems to have forgotten, which probably were more popular than the palm trees in Van Nuys. And maybe if we were thinking about our gardens, we should be using more pepper trees in them. Here's a picture of one of the more unique things. Van Nuys actually is built on the Pacoima Wash, and it would flood at the drop of a hat. And for 50 years, they could not get this problem solved. They didn't know how to solve it. They actually ended up in Pacoima, twisting the Pacoima Wash and running it into the Tahonga Wash. They actually twisted a river so it wouldn't flood in Van Nuys, and it still flooded. And if you look at the Valley Federal Building, which was owned by William Whitsitt, the great pioneer of Van Nuys, he waited 50 years till he could build on that piece of land that flooded all the time. And that was his 8-story monument to himself, one of the more odder monuments. Okay. One of the great pioneers in Van Nuys was William Whitley. Does anyone remember the Praisewater Funeral Home? Yes, yes. That was his house, built in 1911, turned into a mortuary. And essentially, when he built that house back in 1911, he was telling everybody that he was the great impresario who was building the valley, collecting the rents, selling all the property. Here another picture that's essentially taken right where we are today, with the great land, with the great guys who owned the property and their salesmen all sitting around waiting as they've been collecting the money from everybody. You can see quite a bit of 1900s arrogance of the typical land salesman in this. Okay. These were interesting sidebars to the William Whitsitt story. William Whitsitt may still be remembered as one of the great pioneers of Van Nuys. He was such a great salesman. If you went to Los Angeles, if you took the train to Los Angeles, you would find these tags on your luggage to get a free trip to Van Nuys to buy property. He's a very shrewd salesman. Here's another example. Buildings like this are still in Van Nuys. Here we are down at Oxnard and Van Nuys Boulevard. And buildings like this deserve to